Breaking news out of the Miami Heat. Our Shams Charania reporting that Jimmy Butler is on his way to the Golden State Warriors. The deal includes sending Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Anderson, and a protected first-round pick, all to the Miami Heat. Udonis Haslem, you're a resident member of the Miami Heat. What do you think of this trade?
I love it. I love it for both sides, but I love the fact that we get a backup point guard. We lost Drew Smith a little earlier to injuries. We get an athletic wing to put next to Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. Somebody can guard, do it on both ends of the basketball court. We love Swiss Army knife guys. And then we get those guys to play with Bam. And Wiggins has been there. He's been a champion. He understands what it's about. And I also got to give some credit to the veteran, Kyle Anderson. We need a vet in that locker room, some leadership.
You talked about the Miami Heat side. I want to talk about the Golden State Warriors side. If you think about what the words have been coming out of Golden State, it's been about maximizing Steph Curry's prime. This is a first step that you can see, getting Jimmy Butler. It comes down to two things for me. Clutch time. The Golden State Warriors have played the second most clutch time games. They're only 16 and 14. If he can win you some games, meaning you're playing games where it's decided by a few points, that's going to help. Secondly, it's touch time. This season, Jimmy Butler is averaging his lowest amount of touches, which means he's capable of playing off ball. So that's what you're betting on if you're Golden State.
Let's just take a step back here. The Golden State Warriors, they're playing tonight against the Utah Jazz. And our own Young Masuk reporting again, reacting in real time to this, that reporters were in the locker room for their standard pregame locker room availability when Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, and the players who were on the court warming up all were called into the locker room. Reporters were asked to leave, and you have to assume that that's when these sorts of conversations started to happen. Again, the news is the Miami Heat are finalizing a deal to send Jimmy Butler to the Golden State Warriors. I want to bring in the man who broke this news, Shams Charania. Shams, how did this deal come together?
So throughout the last week, the Warriors had really focused their attention on Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant had indicated in league circles that he had no desire to go to Golden State and reunite with the Warriors. So today, in quick order, the Warriors and the Miami Heat, this is an agreement in principle. They are acquiring Jimmy Butler in a trade. Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Anderson, and a protected first-round pick going to Miami. So after a almost 2-month-long saga between the Heat and Jimmy Butler, he is now out. He's going to a Western Conference home, a hopeful contender. He's going to join Stephen Curry, Draymond Green. They've been looking all year for a star player to join those two in that Warriors rotation and lineup. They have aspirations for a championship. They want Jimmy Butler, playoff Jimmy, to be a big part of it.
Playoff Jimmy is on his way to the Golden State Warriors. Shams, thank you very much. As we bring it back here inside our studios, Chiney, do you think that this move gets Golden State closer, given everything that they had to give up?
They're inching closer, but one name that we have yet to mention is Jonathan Kuminga. They have been able to retain him based off of the news. He was not in the deal, which means he was someone that they valued as a future also development, you know, when you think about the Golden State Warriors. So having Draymond, having Steph, we sort of assumed that those guys were untouchable. You add Jonathan Kuminga to that mix, and you bring in Jimmy Butler, now you have some pieces you can work with.
And they might not be done yet. They still have Buddy, they still have Peyton, they still have an opportunity to go get a guy like Vucevic or go get a guy like Bobby Portis. So they still might not be done yet. I think this definitely moves them closer. I know what Jimmy is firsthand, playoff Jimmy. I know what he brings. He's definitely going to take some stress off Steph in the half court. When you need to get a bucket and the game slows down, especially in the playoffs, you can go to Jimmy and he's going to be efficient for you.
There's so many questions still left to be answered, namely Golden State was on the list of several teams that Jimmy Butler wanted to be a part of, but we know Phoenix was the preferred destination.
Continuing to follow the breaking news out of the NBA less than 24 hours before the trade deadline, and the Heat and Warriors and multiple teams getting a deal done here, a deal that sends Jimmy Butler to the Golden State Warriors. And Butler will also sign a 2-year, $121 million extension with Golden State, going back to Miami. Andrew Wiggins, P.J. Tucker, and a 2025 protected first-round pick. And for more reaction, welcome in Sam Quinn and Brad Botkin, both CBS Sports NBA writers. Brad, I know that you are a professional. You are a fan of the Golden State Warriors. What do you think of this move for the Warriors as they try to climb up in the standings?
I am happy about it. It feels like a consolation prize to some degree after all the smoke around Kevin Durant yesterday, which really felt like it was starting to gain traction. But I had a sense all along that all of this talk about Jimmy Butler not being willing to sign an extension with Golden State and that scaring them off from making this move. I had a sense that that was a little bit of a last-ditch effort on his part. He wanted to go to Phoenix, but it was hard for me to believe, given the market that's going to be available to him, given the circumstances that he was going to have to return to in Miami, possibly picking up that player option, getting into a messy sign and trade. I really thought that once he kind of got backed into a corner and saw that these other deals weren't going to work out, that I did think that it would be revisited with Golden State, and that has certainly come to fruition. I don't think it makes Golden State a title contender, but what it does is it makes Steph Curry relevant, and that's really all that you can ask at this point, is for him to not be on a doormat, not be on a lottery team, give him a fighting chance from an entertainment standpoint, from a respect standpoint of what he's given that franchise. And they didn't have to give up Jonathan Kuminga to get him. So I think this is a win for Golden State.
Yeah, Brad, this is a bit of a consolation prize when Kevin Durant is the bar, but if you get rid of Durant, this is still a pretty good trade for them. You know, not only is Jimmy Butler a great secondary scorer to put next to Stephen Curry, he does the specific things that they needed out of a second scorer, right? They never get to the rim. They're 25th in the NBA in points in the paint. Well, what does Jimmy Butler do? He gets to the rim. They're 28th in the NBA in free throw rate. What does Jimmy Butler do? He gets to the line. Great perimeter defender, somebody who's going to slot right into their system, fit in easily. And if you look at what they gave up, it's basically nothing, right? Like that 2025 first-round pick, in all likelihood, it's just going to be like a mid-first-round pick. It's not going to affect their ability to trade picks down the line. You know, that's important from a Stepien rule perspective. You know, Andrew Wiggins, good player in his prime, helped them win a title. You're right, they didn't give up Jonathan Kuminga. They didn't give up Brandon Podziemski. All they really did here was get better in the present without sacrificing much in the future. Would Kevin Durant have been better? Yeah, because he's Kevin Durant. When you can get one of the 15 best players of all time, you do it. But Durant was off the table, and when you think about the cost here, I mean, don't get me wrong, I would have paid everything it would have taken to get Durant, but to get Jimmy Butler for pennies on the dollar, that's still pretty good business.
Jimmy Butler with the 4th most points in the postseason since 2020, Sam. Are you confident that Jimmy Butler going to the Golden State Warriors will rejuvenate him?
Yeah, I suspect he's going to go there and immediately fit in, try to prove himself, right? I mean, he's had to hear, as one of the most competitive players in the NBA for months, about how, oh, he's not worth that much. He's more trouble than he's worth. He's getting older. Somebody that competitive is not going to hear that for months and come to Golden State and kind of mail it in, right? Like, he hasn't been, over the last few years in Miami, as diligent a regular season player as the Heat would have hoped. That's part of why they wanted to move him, why they wouldn't give him the extension. Pat Riley said it himself. He wasn't available enough. He was dialing it up in the playoffs. Well, you know what? Now Jimmy Butler has something to prove, and the Warriors can't afford it for him to, you know, wait until the playoffs to dial it up. They're at not the bottom of the West standings, but they're towards the bottom of that playoff picture as it is. They'd love to escape the play-in race, but if they're going to be a play-in team, at least get up to 7 or 8, give yourself an easier path into the playoffs. Once they get there, Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry are like maybe 2 of the 5 or 6 best players in the NBA. As far as playoff track record goes, they've both accomplished so much on that stage. I wouldn't want to be looking across, you know, in a playoff series, looking across at the other bench and seeing those 2 guys there.
Brad, I asked Sam if this will rejuvenate Jimmy Butler. I already knew the answer to that question. Yes, it will rejuvenate him. Why? Because he's a competitor. He's a competitor in dominoes. He's a competitor when it comes to trades. He's a competitor in the playoffs. Like, this guy is a gamer. The one thing we know about Jimmy Butler, if he can stay healthy in the playoffs, this is a team you want to watch out for. Do they all of a sudden move up to 5th in the West? Probably not. There's not enough time for that to happen in the season. But to get in the playoffs, move up, get out of the play-in situation, this is, at the end of the day, this is exactly what the Warriors are looking for.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. Now, I wouldn't rule out them moving up into the top 6. I mean, I'm not looking at the standings right now.
Why not?
There's a small gap of between those teams. I mean, it sounds bad that they're almost in the lottery and have been flirting with that play-in line, but I think they're only like 3 or 4 games at the most in the loss column out of there. I mean, they could make a run, but yeah, you're right. You get into a playoff scenario, and you can make a case that the teams that Jimmy Butler took to the finals in the Eastern Conference don't have the talent that this Golden State team has. They certainly didn't have a Stephen Curry. If you want to compare a Bam Adebayo with a Draymond Green, if you want to compare a Duncan Robinson with a Buddy Hield, there are players that you could definitely say this is a comparable roster. Now, it's certainly a tougher climb through the Western Conference with all due respect to the Celtics and some of those teams that those Butler teams went through, than it was for Butler in the Eastern Conference. So I don't think it's going to be quite the same thing where Jimmy Butler can just flip a switch in the playoffs and they just roll through the Western Conference. Again, I would not put them up at the top of it, but it is wide open underneath OKC. And again, if Jimmy's out there to prove something, Steph's making one last run, yeah, this is, to Sam's point, it's definitely not a team that you would want to see. You know, I look at it a lot like the Lakers. I wouldn't want to look across the court and see LeBron James and Luka Doncic. Like, that wouldn't make me feel good. But there are flaws on that team. They're not a perfect team. They lack a center to this standpoint. I'm interested to see if the Warriors still go out with some of these assets that they retain and look for a big man and further revitalize, you know, kind of further fill out this roster and give them a chance to play bigger if they need to in certain matchups. But yeah, on its face right now, they get Jimmy Butler. He's still a very, very good player. He'll have something to prove. They're going to be formidable, no question.
Yeah, entering the night, Warriors within 5 games of the Lakers, who are 5th in the standings. So plenty of moving and shaking to be had at the end of the season. Less than 24 hours away from the trade deadline. The biggest trade on this day, Jimmy Butler headed to the Warriors. Sam Quinn, Brad Botkin here on CBS Sports HQ with us. Jimmy Butler is a competitor. Make no mistake about that. This will absolutely rejuvenate this man. 35 years old, but when he gets into the postseason, he's playing at another level. In fact, as I mentioned, 4th most points in the postseason since 2020. You remember he led the Heat, the NBA Finals in 2020 and 2023. Got oh so close, but perhaps Golden State has another run in them with Steph Curry and Draymond Green, and now Jimmy Butler joining them in